Line of Duty is back. This is going to be my review of the first episode of the sixth series. And this series, the special guest star is none other than Kelly MacDonald, under the spotlight as the new mum of the station, Joana Davison, who very quickly becomes under suspicions of her actions and motivations, and it is in a lot of hot bother very quickly. There's one or two adjustments of the cast as well and their positions, although ultimately chances are they're going to come together to investigate possible corruption within the force when it comes to Joanna. So we're introduced to Joanna very quickly. We see that she's attempting to crack a case of a murder investigation, and sort of caution is sort of called when the suspect is there's a lead which is identified as basically a playboy, if you want to use that term, or I can't remember the official term, but is a yeah. I think you know what I'm saying. John, basically, he is the intel. So the boss is sort of no, let's hold back. Let's get more information on that. But Joe kind of goes over his head and presses on anyway, and she kind of gets the team together, the squad, including Kate, who's now working in a different department. But there's an interception of like a dodgy looking van who happens to be in the area at the time that they're going to pick up the possible suspect, and Joanne calls in like the sort of squad, the big guns, if you like. Things get out of hand, and one of them shoots one of like just this random gang in this van. So excessive force. Medics are called, and you can see the frantic nature of the whole thing. And then later on, when they finally do arrest who they believe could be the murderer of the journalist played by a stand-up comedian, by the way, which is interesting, although we only see her in pictures. But the suspect in question, who was named by the intel, is actually a Down syndrome's kid, so or man. So this brings a very different element into the drama, and a very interesting element, because obviously immediately your mind races and you start to be very sympathetic towards this character, and you immediately question, well, how accurate is this intel? And just then they have to tread very carefully when questioning, and how they questioning, and this is something which Kate is conscious to point out. I actually like the detail of her questioning when they say they got a name out of him, like the name of his name, or the name which they'd been fed originally, and Kate is sort of cautious to say, well, did you get it out of him through questioning, or did you offer him up a name? So she's obviously very aware of how someone who has, mental sort of deficiencies can be manipulated in that way. And I think this is an interesting aspect of this episode, is the fact that you do have to tread maybe a bit more lightly when dealing with someone with Down syndrome. But Joanna is very focused and very determined to crack the case, so it's almost like she offers this logic. Then no, you have to press ahead. You have to treat them as if they were like the average person, and you just have to be straight with them, and that's an interesting sort of aspect, because I guess it gets into the weeds of, should you treat them any differently in this sort of case. Now obviously in many ways you have to be sensitive, and you obviously have to do things by the book anyway, because if you get a suspicion and it's through coercion, or it's because you've manipulated the truth out of them, then is that really the truth, and is that really fair? So there's some really great interview scenes. There's a couple of different interview scenes with this Down syndrome character. The actor does an amazing job. He really gets across the anxiety and just how nervous. Um, this is obviously what this show does the best in some ways, is these really intimate, intense interview scenes, and just how the camera lingers and captures all the nervous expressions. And his lawyer does most of the talking. Like, his lawyer reveals that no, his name is actually Terry Boyles. It's not something or other Turner was the name originally given, and he's treated with a lot of suspicion by Joanna and the other interviewer. And yeah, so basically they're sort of saying, well, we can check that, and then when they hear like his address, like this residency, Beechwood's like, well, we can check that as well. And a couple of things happen that sort of intensify their sort of investigation, and they go to the residency, and first of all, they're not 100% certain that it's anyone's residency or a regular place, because it seems to be like really filthy and or barely lived in, I think is the expression. And the other thing is that they find pictures of the journalist all over the walls, and so it does seem that whoever's been living there or staying there is the person that they're looking for. And they later find, evidence that he's Terry has at least, had access to the flat, or then he's seen those pictures, because they find like his semen on them, or at least they say it's a probable match for his semen, and other sort of evidence that he's had access, and he might have had a crush with her. So obviously that's a bit murky, because it might just be that, yeah, he had a crush on her and he was fixated, sort of thing. And obviously they sort of use that a little bit to sort of put the heat on him. But there's also conflicting evidence, because they do find the fingerprints of another man on those photos. Those clippings, they find this man who basically has a history of, aggression, of I think might have been linked with murders in the past. So obviously there's the other character sort of question as well. Isn't he more likely to be the suspect than this vulnerable, Down syndrome person? So the fact that his fingerprints are on the pictures as well does sort of call that into question. And they ultimately have to release him, and we see the pressure that's on Joanna from the boss. They release him on bail, I should say, Terry, so he's still under suspicion, but they do release him on bail, and we see the heat she's getting from the boss just to crack it. And I think that's the whole sort of conflict, is her desperation to just get the case done, probably get the right person, but get someone. Is that clouding her judgment? Is there something else in the background? Obviously, we start to get, AC12 starting to piece together things in the investigation. And we see Hastings and Steve, who now has a brilliant beard. I think it's this sort of, greyer appearance to show, yeah, he's getting a bit older, and he's maybe a bit, more brooding, a bit, down on his luck. We see him on quite heavy medication. So I do like that as a visual choice for Steve. But him and Hastings start to pull certain bits of evidence, like they get information that maybe Joanna was a bit hasty, and they've got a contact from within the department, which is Freda, who was in like the previous series, maybe the one before that as well, but sort of one of those sort of supporting characters who's been bubbling away. And Yeah, they question. She gives them information, but she's very nervous at one point about giving them any more, and we find out why later on. But they start to slowly put together the case. They find out that in the past she was involved in a slightly dodgy investigation. They sort of find out that the guys who was in the van who intercepted, who yeah, they intercepted on the street, then actually they're very minor criminals. So was there really any reason to intercept that van? And that obviously led to one of them being shot. So all sorts of questions, but it's a slow burn episode. There's many different like characters and just little beats because obviously at this point, because of his actions last season and some of the suspicions, Hastings has been put to the background in his department. He's not included on like the sort of task force type team, so he's very much in the background. And I think the actor Adrian Dunbar does a good job of actually showing how sort of underwhelmed he is and sort of how he's just a little bit off to the side. But you can see him and Steve slowly starting to have intel and starting to come together on certain things. But and that's going to be a slow burn thing, as it should be. But plenty of intrigue set up with Kelly MacDonald as Joanna, who I've just seen on the internet some people have been really down on her performance, saying, she's a bit wooden, saying she's miscast, because I guess you're maybe used to her playing certain kind of roles and maybe a bit more innocent type roles. But I don't know. I thought she was great. I thought she was very into it from the beginning. I thought she really showed a lot of the character's conflict and was very direct and intense, and just subtle little touches with the characters. I really like what they're doing with her and Kate, actually, like their sort of friendship or potential relationship, actually. But I really enjoyed their scenes, because there's a scene where it's the one where Kate is just bringing into question the stuff with Terry Crews when they got that, as it turned out, false name out of him, who they thought he was. And there's a scene where when Kate mentions, well, did you get the name out of him properly through like was it a leading question? Joanna speaks over the top of her, so I really like that overlapping dialogue. But it's also this clever touch where you could read it either way. You could just read it as, she naturally spoke over the top of her and wanted to sort of get in with her opinion. Or it could be her speaking over Kate on purpose, like maybe she's got something to hide. So I really like that sort of scene. And I thought Kelly MacDonald was really good casting, because she is the sort of like actress who can play that character where she does do sweet and innocent, and she does do very grounded and everyday sort of character, where actually that's a good fit for this, because she does come off as quite charming, which means she could potentially use that as a way to hide what's really happening. She uses that to get Kate on board, maybe. Obviously, at this point, it could go either way. We're not quite sure. But then there's the fact that they do explore the possibility of there being a possible lesbian relationship with her and Kate, because the bigger reveal near the end of the episode is that her and Farida have been in a relationship. They've been together. It's this really well handled reveal late in the episode where she comes back from work and she comes into like the flat, and there you see Farida, and it's actually a good payoff from earlier where we actually see why Farida tells Steve at one point, this is just like too personal, I can't get involved with this, and she wants to break off the intel that she's been given to AC-12. So that's a really nice payoff, and I think it's a good way to get Farida more involved and give her an extra layer of character. But they have this really full-on fight where they've basically just split up, and Joanna is in the process of leaving, and it's kind of a soapy scene, but I think because the acting is so good and it's a nice little payoff to what's happened before, then it works. It's not really a problem, and it's I think one of the sort of comedy moments, and it's not intentionally comedy, but is when Joanna goes back to her place, so she leaves Verida. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but I think you guys know what I mean. She leaves her flat, comes in, and she just has all these like locks on her door, and she locks every single one. And obviously showing that, yeah, she's very paranoid. She wants all these extra locks, and it's a powerhouse scene actually because she really unloads and unleashes all this frustration. Again, I think this is why you cast someone like Kelly MacDonald, because it's almost like this meeker sort of figure who has all this stuff bottled up, and then you just see her unleash this rage in this scene where she like throws the glass at the wall, and the camera focuses on like a picture, and it's her as a child, her in her younger days with someone like an adult, maybe a mother or something, because there's some line of that Farida sort of mentions that you never introduce me to your family. I don't get to know them, and Joanna claims, well, I never had a family. So that's a very interesting turn at the end there and twist. And then the next day when she's talking to Kate, it's almost implicated that she may be flirting with Kate a little bit. There is a scene where she kind of like strokes her hand or something like that, or sort of holds it. And there was an accusation in the previous scene that, hey, you're leaving me for Kate, sort of thing. And Joanna like puts it away and is kind of like, well, even though she's not a lesbian, and you know that, and I don't know, it brings something interesting into play, because up to this point in the show, we've never known Kate to be a lesbian. I mean, maybe she's bi. I wasn't 100% sure if they were saying there was something romantic between them, but it's an interesting angle for them to play up, because obviously it's another way where Joanna could use that to keep Kate on her side, sort of thing, and amongst the investigation. So yeah, I thought Kelly MacDonald was very good, and I was interested and intrigued by her character from the start. I guess some of it is familiar sort of beats that this show has done before, but sort of turns put on it, like the stuff with the Down syndrome guy. And you can see another intriguing plot building for the next 7 episodes. And well, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I thought a very solid start, and I'm happy with Kelly MacDonald as this season's like big cameo, or like big guest star, if you like. There's also a little thing with the sort of intel that the one who originally gave them the name, and he's actually found dead at one point, which makes their case a little weak. But there's one point where they actually want to find him, to help them in trying to crack the case, to try and, you know, they obviously want him to give evidence, because so they can maybe put Terry Crews away, or maybe try and confirm, or Terry Boyle, sorry, not Terry Crews. That's a Freudian slip, but Terry Crews, a very different guy. But Terry Boyle's away. But no, he's been killed suspiciously, and obviously, you know, that sort of there's implications there. Is Joanna behind that for some reason? But in any case, that was another quite interesting side, because obviously, like, the contact who sort of gave them that source originally wouldn't give him up, and then he mysteriously ends up dead. So that's something else to sort of chew on and investigate. So yeah, intriguing stuff. Obviously, I think, this has been one of the most, like, interesting and exciting dramas of recent years. I think season 5 was a bit below par. It was a step down on, the previous seasons. Very consistent, but and this was a solid start. So I mean, hopefully this will be a step up again, and we can get back on track. Whether it'll be as good as some of the other series, seasons 3, 4, I thought were really exceptional, and it's been consistent pretty much all the way through. But this is off to a solid start. Obviously, quite a lot of, as I said, moving parts, but we'll see where it goes. But a good first episode, I thought. You could see the pace starting to pick up towards the end. But let me know what you thought of the first episode of Line of Duty Series 6. I almost said season because, hey, American UK terminology when it comes to these things. What was you impressed with it? Was you impressed with Kelly MacDonald? Did you think she fit that part well? And I'll be back next week with the next review for episode 2, where we should really get cooking on a lot of these things. But I'm excited that it's back and look forward to see what happens. You can like and subscribe to my channel if you want more of this sort of content, more TV reviews. I also do films and also do live streams from time to time. And you can also get me on Twitter at Keith Beard. You can ding the bell on YouTube to get notifications, and you can support the channel. I will put the donation link in the description. But thanks. See you guys again soon. Goodbye.